To all the drivers out there delivering holiday cheer across our great country, season's greetings and a huge thank you from the Allen Lund Company.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
Welcome to the show. We'll start things off here in a bit with a reality check of sorts, courtesy of our friends at the American Transportation Research Institute. They're out with new analysis of California's plans to cut down emissions. The state will be relying heavily on electric vehicles to get that job done, but ATRI crunched the numbers and found a boatload of challenges. And speaking of boatloads, some hauls are bigger and heavier than others, and some just leave you scratching your head. For instance, what's it take to haul elephants by land and by air? We'll find out today. And then we'll close things out by checking in on the markets. December is shaping up to be one of the slowest freight months in 7 years. DAT's Robert Rouse will run us through the numbers and tell us when things are expected to pick back up. All that and more coming up on today's show. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. The next step has been taken for a rule that establishes stricter truck emission standards. This week, the Environmental Protection Agency's notice of proposed rulemaking that will set the strictest truck emission standards at the federal level was sent to the White House's Office of Management and Budget. The EPA's proposed truck emission standards would require a quarter of new heavy trucks sold in the U.S. to all be electric by 2032. EPA's submission to the OMB comes as environmental groups and Democrat lawmakers put pressure on the Biden administration to act more quickly to establish tougher truck emission standards. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association has called the rulemaking hurried and also pointed out the lack of national charging infrastructure. A recent report on California's electrification readiness revealed that if the state goes to full vehicle electrification, Californians will see more trucks on the road. The American Transportation Research Institute said that due to the heavier battery weight, electrification will reduce cargo carrying capacity in each truck. ATRI estimates for every 1,000 trucks currently on the road, an additional 343 trucks will be needed due to battery weight. Other key findings include the cost of electricity. ATRI said people in California already pay the second highest average rate for electricity at 22 cents per kilowatt hour, compared to the national average of 12 cents per kilowatt hour. To see the full report, you can visit truckingresearch.org. A truck driver was found dead at a truck stop this week in Kentucky. WEHT reports that on December 19th, law enforcement responded to a fatal traffic accident at the Pilot Travel Center in Morton's Gap. Officials learned that the truck driver, Andy Mina, was asked to pull his truck up to allow another driver to connect his trailer. After about 15 minutes, Mina said he checked the side mirror and didn't see anyone, so he backed up into his former spot. When he left a few hours later, he pulled his truck up to exit and noticed someone in between the trailers. Deputies say Herschel Cobb, the driver of the other semi-truck parked next to Mina, had been pinned between the trailers. The 53-year-old Cobb was pronounced dead at the scene. Kentucky State Police have been busy over the past 18 months shutting down an organized cargo theft ring. This week, Kentucky's Governor Andy Beshear announced the Vehicle Investigations Branch of the Kentucky State Police has recovered $5.2 million in cargo theft property. Over the past 18 months, 16 cargo theft investigations were opened, resulting in 10 federal indictments and 7 arrests. The governor says the ring is responsible for more than $10 million in theft. The Federal Highway Administration released an updated manual on uniform traffic control devices. The manual is recognized as the national standard for traffic control devices used on all public roads, bikeways, or private roads open to public travel. In the manual, speed limit settings are detailed. It says that states and local jurisdictions should set appropriate speed limits to reduce the significant risks drivers impose on others, vulnerable road users, and on themselves. Later on, it goes on to say that to support and better emphasize the importance of roadway context in speed limit setting, the administration is coordinating as a separate effort the development of a new comprehensive speed limit setting document. In conjunction with this effort, FHWA will assess the viability of removing the speed limit setting provisions from the manual and will reconsider such a revision for a future rulemaking. A bill that would restrict all travelers from hanging out in the left lane is advancing in Florida. Florida's House Transportation and Module Subcommittee voted unanimously to advance the bill. Bill HB 317 would forbid any vehicle from continuous operation in the far left-hand lane of roadways with a posted speed limit of at least 65 miles per hour. Exceptions would include overtaking and passing another vehicle or preparing to turn left. The bill awaits further consideration during the regular session that begins on January 9th. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association and the National Motorists Association favor efforts to address left lane use. The groups argue that blocking the left lane, whether intentional or not, results in reduced road safety and efficiency. Operations are back up and running at one of South Dakota's ports of entry. Following an 18-month closure, the port has been updated and modernized. Recently, the South Dakota Department of Transportation, along with the South Dakota Highway Patrol, announced the reopening of the port of entry located off I-90 in Tilford. The facility has been closed since August of 2022 during construction. According to the state's Department of Public Safety, the upgrades to the Tilford facility include construction of a new building with an office, scale, and indoor inspection bay, e-screening equipment with weigh-in motion interface, tire anomaly detection, and thermal brake checking systems. According to the state, an average of 5,000 commercial vehicles pass through the Tilford Port of Entry each week. The winner of this year's Transition Trucking Driving for Excellence Award has been announced. Brandon Meredith of Slay Transportation was awarded a T680 Signature Edition truck, which is part of Kenworth's 100th anniversary. This is the 8th year that Kenworth has teamed up with Fastport and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's Hiring Our Heroes program to find America's top rookie military veteran who made the successful transition into a civilian truck driving career. Meredith is a distinguished Army veteran and served 20 years. He retired as a sergeant first class and decided to follow his childhood dream of driving a tractor trailer. 250 bridges have been restored or replaced over the past 4 years in Missouri. The Missouri Department of Transportation is celebrating the completion of Governor Mike Parson's Focus on Bridges program. The program was established in 2019 and was one of the governor's first major investments in transportation infrastructure. The Texas Department of Transportation was named the winner of the 2023 National Roadway Safety Award. KAUZ reports that the Federal Highway Administrator said the problem-solving creativity and dedication shown by the Texas Department of Transportation will save countless lives using a data-driven approach and practices that are proven to reduce crashes. Back in 2017, Texas DOT started a program called Be Safe, Be Seen to address the number of pedestrians killed on a 3-mile section of I-35. Since then, the section of I-35 has seen 64% fewer fatalities overall. And finally, a woman in West Virginia is breathing a sigh of relief after she was reunited with her engagement ring. WSAZ reports that Bailey Davis recently got engaged. On a work trip, she stopped at a rest stop in Ohio where she took her ring off and forgot to put it back on. When she realized she'd left it there, she returned to the rest stop but couldn't find the ring. She posted about the lost ring on Facebook. Cody Warren visited the rest area after Davis and discovered the ring. After not being able to locate anyone who worked at the rest stop, he took the ring home with him and later discovered Davis's Facebook post. He called her to inform he had her prized possession. Bailey offered Warren reward money for his good deed, but he declined, saying finding the ring was reward enough. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. Coming up next, California is trying to cut down emissions, and they're leaning heavily on electric vehicles to get the job done. Antri has new analysis on the topic, and it raises some important questions. That's up next on Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. you need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. About a year ago this month, we told you about a report from the American Transportation Research Institute about the challenges that face the trucking industry amid attempts to electrify it. Well, the Institute is out with a sequel of sorts to end the year, taking a look at the issue through the lens of California's attempts to go green. And joining us with the details is ATRI's Vice President, Jeff Short. Jeff, thanks for speaking with us again. We appreciate it.
No problem. Absolutely happy to discuss any of our research, especially on electrification, which is certainly an ongoing topic and one that probably isn't going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I think this one is particularly interesting. And I guess the question, this analysis that you have here seeks to answer is whether California is basically ready for an electric vehicle future. We're going to get into that answer to that question here in just a moment, but we should mention that this appears, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, this appears to have gotten started last December with ATRI's report called Charging Infrastructure Challenges for the U.S. Electric Vehicle Fleet. Can we go back to that for those who may not remember, refresh our memories about what that report found? Because this is, if I'm not mistaken, kind of a continuation of that. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So with that report, we looked at the full United States, and we said, what would it take to change the fleet in the United States of cars, trucks, SUVs, pickup trucks, everything, to electric? And what are the major impediments facing us to move in that direction? So the first one is the amount of electricity. And we went and calculated how much electricity would be needed to move vehicles in the same manner they're moved today. And what we found was it would require an increase of 40% of the electricity produced. So today's electricity, vehicles would consume 40%. We would need massive utility, infrastructure, investment, more electricity to be produced in order to meet that goal. And then we also looked at how much of the materials that go into the batteries would be required to replace the U.S. fleet. And that was a huge number. There was many years, in some cases decades, of global production would be required. And also, a lot of the known reserves would have to go to U.S. vehicles. And granted, there will be a number of other countries who will be seeking these materials. And then finally, from a specifically trucking perspective, we said, what's this going to take as far as truck parking? How are trucks going to refuel? And we found that there's a huge need for chargers. There would need to be a charger at every single truck parking spot in America, at the very least, more than 300,000 fast chargers to support the trucking industry. And that would cost a lot, require a lot to maintain that as well. So those were the national questions.
And the takeaway was we're not ready. And then you kind of are now focusing on California here, I imagine, because California has been at the forefront of pushing this electric vehicle future, right?
Yes, California is definitely at the forefront, and folks are working to comply with California's rules. If you're a trucking company that meets their requirements, I believe in January 2024, in a couple of days really, you're going to have to be in a certain place in order to continue to operate in California. So we received a lot of interest in the national report, and also a lot of questions. How is California prepared for this? Are they ready to move to an all-electric fleet?
And the answer to that question appears to be no, based on the analysis that I've seen here. Is that a pretty safe assumption there?
So we found a lot of challenges. I can't say that it's impossible or that it's possible. We went through all of the research we did in the past and said, these are some of the challenges when it comes to moving, in particular, Class 8 trucks over to electricity in California. And quite frankly, is it possible? Certainly anything's possible. Is it practical? It doesn't seem to look practical when you look at some of these numbers.
Yeah, and I want to make sure we get through all of these because I think it does, when you put them all together, paint a pretty clear picture of where we are at right now. And as you kind of put it there, the challenges that we're all facing or California's facing as it, again, attempts to move into this new phase here. So let's kind of go through these here, and you kind of label these as realities. Again, realities in another word could be challenges here. One reality that you mention here in this report, this analysis, is that the state of California is currently, right now, as we speak, consuming more electricity than it's producing. And if we were to, again, transition to electric vehicles, Class 8 trucks, that consumption is going to be a lot higher even than it is now, right? Can you talk a little bit about that particular reality and particular challenge?
Yes. So California is the second largest consumer of electricity in the country, fourth largest producer of electricity. So they don't make as much as they consume. Hence, they're the first largest in net imports of electricity. This electricity they import is coming from, let's say, states like Nevada, Arizona. It's also coming from Mexico, in fact. So what we see as a challenge here is that California doesn't necessarily want to produce a lot of electricity in the ways that is currently available. As far as non-renewable sources, that makes up 66.4% of the electricity is from non-renewable sources. That means natural gas, that means nuclear, but the plurality, if you will, of production is from natural gas. Only 33.6% is renewable. That would be solar and wind mainly. So even if cars and trucks are using the electricity, it's more likely than not to be coming from a non-renewable source, which doesn't necessarily solve any of the problems that we're attempting to solve here.
And the result of that, I mean, who's going to end up paying for that, right? You kind of determine here that consumers are going to end up paying more for goods that are delivered by electric trucks, considering the current environment, right?
Yeah. The consumers will ultimately pay that cost if it's in the form of electricity, or even if it's in the form, we don't really touch on it. And the cost of these trucks is over $400,000, 2 to 3 times more expensive than a diesel truck that can do the same job. So certainly total cost of ownership, that hasn't been settled whether or not it's cheaper or not, but it looks more expensive from this research perspective. Of course, the old cliche is time will tell.
Yeah.
Will these prices change? Will these prices come down? I don't see how electricity in a place like California is ever going to be cheaper than it currently is. And as far as battery materials, which is another thing we touch on, battery materials, the price of these materials may go up significantly as more countries demand the materials for their electric cars.
Yeah, it's a scarce resource for sure. One more thing, too, and we talked about intentions earlier. I want to make sure we talk about this as well, because the intention here, of course, is to lower emissions and, go green, essentially. But you point out in this analysis, once again, that California is going to need to run even more battery electric Class 8 trucks to haul the same amount of freight that's being hauled right now. Can you talk a bit about that?
That's correct. We've looked into our operational cost of trucking report. We receive a lot of operational data points from hundreds of trucking companies over the years telling us how much it costs to run their operation. So we looked at how many in the truckload sector in particular were hauling enough freight that they would need another truck. And this is because a battery electric truck, some of them are to do the same job as a diesel truck. They may have to weigh more than 30,000 pounds just for the truck, just for the Class 8 unit. So our calculation came out to for every 1,000 trucks, an additional 343 trucks would be required due to battery weight. And that's based on real data. That's based on real operational data. If you are weighing out your truck at 80,000 pounds plus, you're going to need another truck because the battery weight is going to be eating up the space for cargo.
Yeah. And again, when you put that, take that into account and you put it together with all the other things that we've talked about here, these realities, these challenges, it really does have you scratching your head, and you understand where they're trying to get because it's a noble goal. And I think it's one that everybody can agree is worthwhile. But it does feel like things are being rushed here in California and in other states as well. I guess as we try to kind of wrap this up in a nice tiny bow, what is the path forward? I guess this analysis, what do you hope comes from it? Or do you hope anything comes from it, I suppose?
So I think we need to step back and look at all of the options that are out there. Certainly electrification is one option. It does work in certain segments of the trucking industry. The industry is all for decreasing CO2 and other emissions, but is this the right way? One of the realities we point out here is certain areas of California's electricity generation. You have the largest power plant in California is a nuclear power plant. It provides 8.5% of the state's electricity. And folks want it closed. Folks in the state want this nuclear power plant closed. I'm not an expert on how safe or unsafe this particular power plant is, but I do know there's pressure to close it. It is scheduled to close, or was scheduled to close in 2025, and the state realizes that this is a source of electricity that does not have CO2 emissions, let's say, that is critical, and its future is up in the air. So that's just one example of something California needs to look at before they push all of these rules towards the industry. They need to step back and say, can we actually deliver the electricity that's needed? And it's a lot of electricity, and there are lots of questions whether or not the sources of that electricity, how stable they're going to be, because the amount of megawatt hours required by the state is going to increase dramatically as more people adopt electric vehicles. That's really a no-brainer. I mean, the more vehicles out there, the more electricity is going to be needed. And we can't rely on, let's say, battery technology to catch up, because we just don't know. Are the batteries going to get denser? Are they going to be able to hold more? Are the vehicles going to be more efficient? We can make assumptions, but we don't actually know. But at the end of the day, it's very clear that electricity production is going to have to increase dramatically, especially when we're talking about Class 8 trucks, which are going to use a tremendous amount just because of the job they do, because they are moving tens of thousands of pounds of freight.
Our thanks to Jeff Short of Attree. Check out his analysis for yourself at truckingresearch.org. And as a reminder, these aren't just hypotheticals. Starting this coming year, manufacturers in California are required to start increasing their production of zero-emission trucks. And by 2035, the state aims to have 300,000 zero-emission trucks on the road. For Landline Now, I'm Scott Thompson.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine ViberTech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with ViberTech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Loadboard Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Loadboard Pro.
Landline Now, welcome back. Stephen Fritz joins me now. He transports elephants around the U.S. Stephen, thank you for joining me. Can you talk to me a little bit about what it is you do?
How I got started or down the road, I've moved animals, specifically elephants mostly, for 35 years, and it was a once-in-a-while instance a long time ago. It was a very good friend of mine worked with a zoo, and I helped them on a project, and then it led to another project, and later on their curator, actually, he was kind of a mentor to me, said, you need to do this, because I'll be honest, I have the ability to figure out details and the mechanics of things on the common sense side of it. And over the years, in trucking most of my life, I did a lot of freight hauling. I became a hay broker, trucked and hauled hay, and then moved animals on the side. We had started building some of our own equipment. The last 10 years, I pretty much retired from everything except the animals. And to date, we moved, I'm just going to estimate 110 plus elephants, 3 of them from around the world, 4 of them on airplanes. So they'd become a real project. We've also moved a few other assorted animals on certain occasions. It was a self-developing project. My wife and I kind of stayed at it and improved it every time we've done it. And we've improved our business by listening to our customers' requests and desires and also looking out for the animal. We are under federal jurisdiction with permits to do this because most of the animals we move are endangered species. So you need to look at that very seriously. Something we were good at and we like, and it's interesting. So it's just developed into a business over the years.
And how, I guess the first question I think I know a lot of people in our office had, how often are you moving elephants?
We moved, during COVID, we moved nothing for 18 months or a little more because the zoos and everybody in the industry pretty much shut down. Otherwise, we can move anywhere from 2 or 3 a year to 7 or 8. It depends on, we moved as many as 3 at one time using 2 trucks. We have all the transport crates. We've constructed those ourselves. They're very unique for elephants. They're a one-of-a-kind type design. Depends on the industry. A lot of the elephants we move are for breeding purposes, mostly the males. Some of the males, there's one male we've moved 5 times over the last 15 years, and different locations for different breeding. Some of the zoos some zoos have actually closed their elephant programs and sent their elephants to a better facility. Or a couple of them, actually, we've taken them out where they rebuilt their facility. So there's many reasons to move them. And a lot of elephants, there's 200 plus elephants in the United States, which isn't really a lot when you think about the big picture.
What is the process like to transport an elephant?
Okay, the process is not like showing up and loading them and going because of the nature of the animal. Of course, they're the largest land mammal, and elephants are very, very intelligent. I don't let anybody tell you they're not. They're considered to be the next most intelligent land mammal compared to man, over primates even. So to move an animal like that and that large, they need considerable training. And I'm looking at the animal's safety, not just people, but the animal itself and their well-being. Several years ago, the old school would be cowboying an elephant in. You'd actually show up and you get leg restraints on them and winch them in, pull them in, whatever it took to encourage them to get into the trailer or whatever you're moving them in. We don't do that anymore. It's not an acceptable thing by us or the industry. So to move an animal now, you do a site visit to the zoo, and both shipping and receiving. If you haven't been there before, we need to do that so we know what we're getting into, not just the animals, but understanding the people we work with and the physical facilities of the zoo. A lot of zoos have nice facilities, but their access is terrible. We looked at one the other day, and the access is awful, but we fortunately can use a 35,000-pound forklift instead of a crane to place the crate and then remove the crate later with the animals. So back to your question, the process, basically we take the equipment, a transport crate to the facility, or crates if there's more than one animal, and we'll give them, it could be from a few weeks to 2 or 3 months, for them to train that animal on a daily basis to become accustomed to that transport crate and comfortable with it, to learn how to eat, drink in it, stand comfortably in it, and be restrained in it. That becomes their second home. So on move day, picking the crate up with the animal is a new thing to them, but they're in it. And the familiarization is extremely important to keep their stress levels down. And during that time, the keepers with the animal are always a key part of the process. I won't move an elephant without a keeper that the elephant knows, or vice versa. And that familiarity for that animal So they can develop that relationship with the keeper of, this is my second home. On move day, it becomes a new ball game. Of course, the elephant then is encouraged into the crate, typically at the same time every day, or they've developed a process, the keepers, that we help them with that depending on the situations, so that the elephant is the most comfortable it can be when it comes time to load it. They're restrained in, and at that point then, once they're in, you come in with a crane. In most cases, sometimes we can use a forklift, which is actually better if you have accessibility. You load the animal on the truck, and in our situation, we have a 48-foot step deck we can move 2 female elephants with. We have a custom-built 45-foot double drop trailer we use for the big males because the crate is so tall and heavy that we can only use one on that. On the front of these trailers, we have what we consider a utility room, which consists of a diesel generator, very large HVAC system. The elephants crated and on the trailers. We tarp the crates to keep the outside air from influencing the atmosphere inside, be it a hot day or a cold day. And we can drop the outside temperature inside the crate about 22 degrees from the ambient temperature outside. On a cold day, we can raise it as much as 40 degrees. So that gave us a bigger window of transporting the animals throughout the year. We've developed this. Every time you do this, you develop something to make it better. And it's for the animals' health and safety, too, to keep them comfortable. So we have climate control, and we can also develop a way to haul hippopotamus and or rhinos in a special container that utilizes the same HVAC system. So it's become a very unique business, yes. During the transport, we have 2 qualified drivers, 3, including myself as an emergency driver, because we go nonstop. I say nonstop, we stop every couple hours for a welfare stop for the benefit of people as well, and the animals to make sure they're secured and safe, and sometimes feed them. Outside of that, the trips are, they're continuous. We don't stop for the night anywhere. We also have a veterinarian. It's on our staff, and he's been on over 70 elephant transports with us and is considered to be one of the top veterinarians for elephants in the world and rhinos. And he is part of our project. Typical transport, our team will consist of 6 people. It'll be 2 truck drivers, myself and my wife as project managers and basically manage the entire project. We have an assistant labor driver and our veterinarian. We put wireless cameras in the elephant crates, 2 cameras in each crate, and we can monitor those from the chase vehicle, of which we have, and also the attending zoos will have their own. They have to supply their own vehicle, but they will have their own staff that needs to go. They'll have a monitor, so everybody can watch the elephants during transport, and that's extremely important. The truck drivers don't monitor the elephants. They keep the truck between the white lines. If there's a situation, we call them and tell them what to do or not to do. We've developed a very precise process for this, Ashley.
Wow. And so you do transport other animals. You mentioned a few.
Yes, we have. In the past, we moved rhinos on a small scale. We have an enclosed horse trailer. We actually pull with a motorhome. We moved wild dogs. I moved a couple lions, things like that. There's other transporters out there that do a lot of that, but we fill in the gaps doing that as well. Even moved 2 Komodo dragons just one day. So we'll do anything. We just finished the project a couple weeks ago, and that was probably an experience of a lifetime. There was a zoo in Puerto Rico that the federal government, Department of Justice, closed due to really severe conditions of the zoo. The zoo had been closed to the public for 5 years, and the federal government, under the request of the USDA and Fish and Wildlife Service, ordered the zoo closed and evacuated. There's an elephant sanctuary out of Colorado, and I will give you the name. It's called Wild Animal Sanctuary, and they're real good at rescue, and they will find a home for the animals. That zoo had over 600 species in it, or 600 animals. They found a home in 2 months for every animal in that zoo. It was considered a humanitarian animal rescue. We were called in because we have 1 elephant, and to get off the island of Puerto Rico, nothing goes by boat, it goes by air. We have moved them by air before, so that's expensive. For us to move an elephant by air up front, I'll tell you, we use Atlas Air, big company. They're like a subcontractor. If I needed a second truck, I call them. And you close charge of a 747 freighter. We flew the elephant with that. At the request of the sanctuary, being we had a large aircraft, we also put on a rhinoceros, 2 hippopotamus, a donkey, and a small impala deer. They all came over to Jacksonville. That was, I think, 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. It was May 12th. Those animals were then dispersed onto our semi-truck and another one that we had leased under our authority. The elephant went to Georgia. The other animals went to a private preserve in Abilene, Texas. So we'll take them all on. I mean, that was a request that got us into a little territory we've not really done before, but we pulled it off. I had to source a rhino crate, 3 hippo crates. Other zoos were more than willing to let us borrow theirs. We refurbished them, and we got that process done in 8 weeks from the day I got the phone call. And the animals are all safe. And after that, then I was called in. They had another aircraft come over to Dallas, Texas that had smaller animals. Long story short, it was a new one for me. I used a 55-foot reefer trailer to climate control that, and I had 252 assorted reptiles that I took to Los Angeles. So I moved a lot of different animals, if you want to ask, yes. My wife and I, we've become very resourceful, and that's what developed our business by never say no. There is a way to do it, and we'll get it done safely.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever get any interactions with the elephants?
Ourselves, sometimes we do. It depends on the animal. We're capable and qualified to move an elephant without the keepers, and I don't care if it's an untamed elephant or a docile elephant. There's methods to do it safely for everybody and the animal. We always request the zoos supply the keepers and staff to do it right. Push comes to shove, we'll make sure it gets done right and safely. We'll never force the animal. They call it force loading like we used to do. You drag them in. We don't do that. They're trained to go in. There's methods to get them in, even if they're not compliant with you when the day comes, because sometimes the day comes, they need to go because you're fighting a weather window or equipment or different things like that. No, we're capable of doing the whole thing. Our interaction with the animals themselves, I love the animals, not just elephants, but everything. Like our welfare stops, the zookeepers tend to the elephant, give them their treats, their food. We have a source of water to keep water on board 24/7 for them. If they don't fill the voids, we do. We cover that. And the staff that works with me are all experienced, and everybody can do what we need to do if the zoo's in the tent.
How does it feel, like the situation you just mentioned about the rescue in Puerto Rico and getting that elephant and all the other animals transported to somewhere safe? How does that feel after that must have been a lot of work and a lot of coordinating. Once that delivery is made and that elephant's on safe ground, how does it feel?
Well, it feels different than any other project because it was a rescue, and it makes you feel really good because you did something for the animals. And then the sanctuary that hired us, the Wild Animal Sanctuary out of Colorado, that hired us to do this, their money is donated by donors that have big hearts for animals. And every penny they spent, which cleaning that zoo out was over a $2 million project just to relocate the animals to new homes. Every penny spent was what people wanted it to go and for the benefit of the animals. So every animal's left there successfully. But yeah, it's a really good feeling, actually. Just moving elephants is always, it's a big sigh when you're done because we've done it a lot. There's a lot of routine, but it's still a little bit stressful because there's a big concern, a big animal, and you want to make sure everything's done right. The people that go along are satisfied and safe. But that rescue, that was a different feeling. That was a real, I don't know if we'll do it again if somebody asks. I'll never say no. Boy, that one was a surprise, but we did it. We did it in 8 weeks.
It's absolutely fascinating. Yeah, it's a very unique, I'm sure. What are people's reactions like when you're casually having a conversation and somebody asks you what you do for work?
Most people go, that's amazing, but we never thought about how do they move them. Any animal in the zoo, they always see the zoos, they appreciate that, but how are they handled behind the scenes and what happens? So it's an impressive job to a lot of people. Yeah, we're a trucking company, but the truck basically is a tool of our business because we have a lot of other equipment that goes with it, believe me. So, but it's unique. We have all our federal authorities like anybody else and insurance and the whole ball game. But if people are impressed, we're proud of what we do. The highlights and the best news when a project is done is no news to me or good news that the animals are safe. That's what we like.
That was Stephen Fritz talking about his operation of transporting elephants. For more information and to see pictures of what he does, you can visit elephanttransport.com. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now. Welcome back. There are a number of critical questions you need to answer in order to run a successful trucking business. Among the most important of those questions are, where's the freight going to be and how much is it going to pay? Today, Landline Now senior correspondent Ashley Blackford will bring us answers to both of those important questions with a look at this week's freight markets with the folks from DAT. Here's Ashley now with the report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello once again to Robert Rouse with DAT. How are you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing great, Ashley. Thanks for asking.
Let's start off by taking a look at the spot market. How did it perform last week?
Yeah, last week was another slow week. We saw the number of loads decrease again by around 7.4%, down to 813,000 loads. Even though December is expected to be one of the slowest freight months, this one is one of the slowest in the last 7 years. We do expect that it will continue to be pretty slow until the first few weeks of the new year. So the next couple weeks probably going to be about the same. When we look at the number of trucks on the DAT load board, they also decreased by about 4%, down to 356,000 trucks. When we look at the overall strength of the spot market last week, we saw load to truck ratios decrease for both vans and reefers, while flatbeds did actually see a small jump of about 4%, which was mostly driven by less available trucks in the market, not really a big change in the number of loads. When we look at last week's dry van load to truck ratio specifically, high levels of routing guide compliance in the contract freight market are resulting in fewer loads entering the spot market compared to prior years. Even in 2019, and a notoriously poor year in the freight market, load post volumes have still decreased about 18% in the last month. While carrier equipment posts are tracking identically to pre-pandemic years, last week's dry van load to truck ratio dropped by about 6% week over week, down to 1.76. One of the other things that we look at, and similar to other market indicators, we saw the national benchmark broker to carrier spot rates without fuel decreased about a penny per mile for both vans and reefers last week. Compared to the prior two recessionary freight periods in 2016 and 2019, line haul rates actually increased by about 10 cents per mile for vans and about 20 cents per mile for reefers from this point to the end of the year. So we might see a little bit of a bump in rates. This year's spot market is tracking the closest to 2019. Both were mostly flat to down slightly in the last 3 weeks after Thanksgiving before the starting of the year-end climb, as capacity starting to tighten a little bit. Like reefer and dry van sectors, this year's spot market is tracking the closest to 2019. Both were flat during November before starting the year-end climb as capacity tightens for flatbeds.
Now, even though markets change almost on a daily basis, are there markets that are consistently strong?
Yeah, of course. There's about 135 distinct freight markets in the nation. In each, there are loads available on a daily basis. But whether it's a good or bad year for freight volume, there's 5 markets that account for about 15 to 20% of the freight volume moving each day nationwide. Which markets are the freight behemoths? Well, while their order varies by season and year, these 5 freight markets lead the country in freight volume. It starts out with Atlanta, Georgia, Ontario, California, Joliet, Illinois, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Dallas, Texas. These 5 freight markets are geographically distributed across the entire country. Each is a hub for its region. These cities are all different, but the factors that they have in common include they're served by at least one major interstate highway, good rail service, a major airport is usually nearby, and a couple also handle a significant percentage of freight directly from nearby ports. In addition, each is home to a wide variety of warehouse and distribution centers. Collectively, they have millions of square feet of space for freight of all kinds. Now, Landline has already done a deep dive in the Joliet market, which is about 40 miles southwest of Chicago. Freight from Joliet moves across the entire nation, of course, but it is both a gateway and a feeder to markets across the entire Midwest. Like each of the other top markets, Joliet is near to several major interstate highways, 2 airports, and the Port of Chicago. In addition, the greater Chicago area has been the nation's rail hub since the 1870s. Similarly, the freight market in Atlanta is the hub for freight to go all across the Southeast. Atlanta is also a rail hub and has 3 main interstates that serve the city: I-20, I-75, and I-85. Atlanta is also one of the nation's busiest airports, and it is about a half-a-day drive from the port of Savannah, which is now one of the nation's busiest ports. Ontario, California is about 40 miles east of Los Angeles along the I-710 freeway. Interstate 15 serves the city, and I-5, I-10, and has spurs are also relatively close. It is also close to several airports. With millions of square feet of warehouse and distribution space, Ontario is the first destination for a large percentage of container ship cargo that has been offloaded at the Port of Los Angeles or the Port of Long Beach. From Ontario, it is then shipped to cities across the region and then even the nation. Harrisburg is the freight hub of the Northeast. While most of New England is composed of backhaul freight markets, the area served by Harrisburg is the nation's most densely populated. Much like the other 4 markets, it has millions of square foot of warehouse and distribution space. Freight comes into Harrisburg and then distributed across the entire region. The capital city of Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, is located in the south central part of the state, and the Pennsylvania Turnpike I-76 and Interstate I-81 both meet there. Lastly, with Dallas, the freight hub in the Southwest, freight from Mexico often ends up in Dallas before being further distributed across the country. Multiple interstate highways, I-20, I-30, I-35, and I-45, serve as the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and each has spurs to handle specific truck traffic. Like Joliet in Ontario, Dallas is served by 2 major airports and is also a regional rail hub as well. Each of these cities have become one of the top 5 markets in the U.S. for slightly different reasons, but they all have common attributes. These include that the area's highway, rail, air, and port systems all support the trucking system. Trucking companies, shippers, 3PLs, and support companies congregate in or near them because of the volume of freight and the ability to move it efficiently.
As we start to close out another year, what tips do you have for owner-operators in a new year?
Yeah, we know the current market is pretty tough for owner-operators. Low rates and high costs spell trouble for any business in any industry. But with the traditional tight margins associated with operating a trucking business, the current climate has many truckers operating at a razor's edge. To get to the light at the end of the tunnel, your focus should really be on cost controls and operational efficiencies. And I know we've talked about those recently as well. Over the last 20 years, we have seen some really great years and some really disastrous ones. One of the things that I've learned from drivers that have continued to thrive in any market is using data to adapt their business. Using data can help you understand what the market may do and when. Like any other market, timing is everything in the truckload freight. The ups and downs occur regularly, but when does one cycle end and another one begin is really the $1 million question that everybody asks. Generally speaking, the cycles follow a familiar pattern. When truckload capacity tightens, rates rise. When rates rise, new carriers enter the marketplace and large fleets add more trucks. As truckload capacity increases and demand softens, rates fall. When rates fall, then carriers leave the marketplace and capacity once again tightens. This up and down happens all the time. The reason why you usually hear people like myself reference previous freight cycles is because while history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, it definitely rhymes. And you can use the previous comparisons for potential indicators as to when a specific market may turn and go different directions.
All right, Robert, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley.
That was Robert Rouse with DAT. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.